Now, the Education Secretary has announced today that schools in England will be given access to data revealing how their school is using the National Tutoring programme to help pupils catch up on lost learning from the pandemic.
Well, we're now joined by Michelle Donelan. Michelle is Minister for Higher and Further Education. Michelle, good morning to you. Just want to know from you, what sort of task are you facing here? So many children fell behind, were left behind because of that pandemic. What's next? What's going to happen? Can you fix it?
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that it had an impact on children's education attainment. And that's why we've focused on this. We've invested $5 billion throughout the next 3 years. And one of the key flagship policies of that is the tutoring programme. Tutoring, as in the past, only really been for those that can afford it. But it does have a dramatic impact on attainment. And that's why we're investing and opening it up for any pupil that has been impacted because of the pandemic. The Secretary of State has written to schools today, but also to parents to make them aware of the offer on the table and help them to encourage their school to get involved.
How intense is schooling going to be in the next couple of years ahead? I mean, you know, it can be intense for any of us. We think back at our own memories of it. But, you know, by and large, luckily I can look back at my school life, primary and secondary, and say, I quite enjoyed it. It was good. But I'm just wondering now with kids...
Well, you're thinking of Jules Oliver as well yesterday, the wife of the famous chef Jamie Oliver, talking about just how overly stressful schools have become and how she thinks that in many ways exams are actually a waste of time and that they're not that helpful for real life. What do you think about that standpoint?
Well, in terms of the additional pressure on young people, we want to remove some of that pressure by adding additional support in the form of tutoring so that they don't feel that they're behind on where they should be. This is not about piling on the pressure. It's actually about alleviating some of that. But we do need exams because we need a fair way of assessing people to move on to the next part of their academic journey. That's why we were so keen to get back to face-to-face exams this year, having had 2 years of obviously disrupted and different types of awarding of qualifications.
I want to ask you about Porngate, Tractorgate, whatever you want to call it. We heard from Neil Parish on Saturday that he's going to stand down. What's the answer to all of this? I mean, there's headline after headline making Westminster look really unedifying. And as a woman, I wonder what your reaction to that is and what you think needs to be done about it.
Yeah, it is important to say, as a woman, as an MP for 7 years, I haven't experienced any of these things. It is the minority. The minority who are letting down the rest of Parliament, that are damaging democracy in this country. And we must call it out. We have an independent complaints and grievances scheme. It was only set up 3 years ago. I would encourage anybody that has experienced any of these incidences to come forward. We need to make this minority know that they can't get away with this kind of behaviour. It's not acceptable in Parliament, just like it wouldn't be acceptable in any other workplace. And like my constituents, I'm just as appalled reading some of the stories that have been covered as I'm sure they are.
And your reaction this morning to the news that Crispin Blunt has decided that he'll stand down at the next election, and whether or not, I'm interested as well, whether or not you think in his constituency and indeed Neil Parish's constituency, whether or not there should be perhaps all-female shortlists?
Well, I think that completely misses the point. I find quotas demeaning to women. Women can certainly get there on their own merit. We've seen that with 2 female prime ministers in my own party. We have a Home Secretary who's female, a Foreign Secretary who's female. What we need to be doing is encouraging women to come forward to stand, removing the barriers, which we have been doing with organisations such as Women to Win, led by Baroness Jenkins. But imposing these arbitrary quotas does nobody any favours, in particular women.
Michelle Donelan, thank you so much indeed. Michelle is the Minister for Higher and Further Education, speaking to us live this morning from Wiltshire. We've got to leave it there. Thank you, Michelle.